What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Today, I'm going to be talking about the glorious blue box where you're going to spend most of the time in your BECMI campaigns. That's because this covers the probably most consequential 11 levels of the BECMI game. So, with it being that important to the line, it better be good. And believe me, it is. As a matter of fact, it's my favorite of the BECMI boxes. So without further ado, this is Building with BECMI, Part 2, the Expert Set. If you do enjoy the content today, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, as this is the only way to advance the channel to name level. Nerds! 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 If you want to hex crawl over to Books, Bricks, and Boards Discord channel, you will find an amazing group of like-minded gamers.
I think they're talking about us.
Eager to have those conversations about whatever RPG is on your mind. Link in the description. History of the Expert Set. After the success of the two prior basic sets for Dungeons & Dragons, TSR released the first of their Expert Set products in 1981.
Hey, look! A Dungeons & Dragons ride!
That particular version was written by Dave Cook and had that great Errol Otis cover illustration. It had a 64-page rulebook covering the players' and Dungeon Master's rules, as well as the excellent Isle of Dread module. This box is what really cemented BX and later BECMI lines as different and apart from the company-favored Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. With the two prior basic sets, only levels 1 to 3 were covered, thereby setting the expectation that to play beyond that, you needed to move up to the advanced game. With the release of the Cook Expert Set, you could now advance all the way to 14th level, effectively opening up years of gaming and infinite possibilities. Now players could move their characters beyond being the likely victims of the next monsters that they encountered, into a point where they could truly begin to shape the world around them. It also meant that rather than being confined to primarily short dungeon delves, the players could now partake in epic quests covering trips to distant lands via horse or ship
To sailboats.
and explore the entire game world. While the Cook Expert Set only technically covered up to 14th level, it did include a formula on page 10 to allow advancement up until 36th level for clerics, fighters, magic users, and thieves. Curiously, the Cook Expert Set also said that players could opt to wait for the companion set to cover those levels beyond 14, though it would unfortunately never materialize for this edition.
That's not gonna happen.
The most interesting part of this paragraph is the glimpse of what might have been, as the teaser in the Cook Expert Set suggested that the Thief class would receive new abilities, as their skills by level 14 were all nearing 100% success rate. Some of the possibilities discussed in the Thief skills section were climbing while hanging upside down, ventriloquism, distraction, and voice mimicry. As we will find out when the BECMI Companion set finally released, they unfortunately decided to take the Thief another route. The Cook Expert Set was, of course, the end of what is now known as BX D&D, but fortunately for us, it is also where BECMI D&D began.
TSR Hobbies, Dungeons & Dragons games, products of your imagination.
In August of 1983, the same year as the BECMI Basic Set released, TSR released Frank Mintzer's take on the Expert Set, which is the subject of our video today. What's in the box? When a gamer in 1983 opened their new Frank Mintzer Expert Set box, they would find a set of dice, a 64-page rulebook, which, like the Cook version, covered both player and D information in one book, and a 32-page adventure, an updated version of the same Isle of Dread that was in the Cook Expert Set. This new updated version of the module had a different cover and a new layout that helped it to match the TSR trade dress of the time. Within the 64-page Expert Set rulebook, players would find a product much closer to the Cook Expert Set than they did with the Mintzer Basic, as it compared to the Moldvay Basic, at least insofar as it concerned the presentation in the Basic Player's Manual using play to introduce gaming concepts and such. To be fair, choices had to be made, and one of my 3 criticisms of the basic set was the exclusion of the prior version's separate module, and in order to not exclude Isle of Dread, sacrifices in page count had to be made somewhere. I guess I'm just hard to please because I want it all. All that said, there are still some significant changes in the BECMI expert rules, including significant improvements in both layout and art, as well as some subtle but impactful rules changes. For example, in the Cook Expert set, clerics gained access to 5th level cleric spells at only 7th level in cleric. In gaming terms, that means that Raise Dead became available at only 7th level, which is extremely early in the game. Mincer improved the cleric spell chart, giving them access to their 5th level spells at a cleric level of 10, placing them much more in line with magic users and elves. Additionally, if you got a later printing of the Mincer Expert set, you would find that Thieves' skill success rates were drastically reduced from those in the Cook Expert set. This is because the companion set Thieves had their success rate tables stretched out over the remaining levels of the game rather than the first 14 levels. This, of course, further weakened the already dismal Thief class, so much for hanging upside down in ventriloquism, I guess. That said, the original Mincer Expert box has the more favorable thief skills found in the Cook Expert box, and that version is the one that is available on DriveThruRPG. The Players section of the book covers levels from 4 to 14 of Cleric, Fighter, Magic User, and Thief classes, as well as the cap levels of 12, 10, and 8 for the Dwarf, Elf, and Halfling classes respectively. By the time they explored the levels in the Expert set, players would be quite formidable and very likely even have their very own stronghold or tower if they were a mage, as well as devoted followers seeking to learn from their legendary experiences. Of particular note, the book contains the format from the basic box, keeping everything you need for each class together in one spot, progression tables, saving throws, and spell lists, now covering up to 6th level spells for both clerics and magic users, all right there in one convenient place, eliminating excessive page flipping. The equipment section reflects the change of focus to overland and water adventures, including horses and barding for those Elder Scrolls fans, camels, wagons, and nice selections of boats. There is additional discussion of the particulars around overland travel, including movement rates, methods of travel, foraging and hunting rules, and the importance of rest. None of this was particularly necessary in the prior boxes. Adventures were never much more than a day in the dungeon prior to heading back to town. Now that players would be traveling great distances, they needed to know about the complications of travel. There is an optional updated encumbrance system, but I don't know anyone that was a stickler for these rules. If your group was strict on the encumbrance rules, tell me about it in the comments. We basically just used the threat of this to keep ridiculous abuses policed at my tables. All said, the players section covered a very tight 21 pages, not bad for covering 11 levels. The DM section of the book starts on page 22 and carries all the way through the end. It covers the topics of demi-human clan societies, climbing for non-thieves, ironic since that is the only reliable thief skill at that point, special combat situations including aerial, unarmed, naval, underwater, and bombing rules, rules for constructing your strongholds and towers, rules for gaining followers, hiring mercenaries, how to create NPC parties, advice on not overusing the dice, how to research spells and build magical items, specialist tradespeople to stock your strongholds, swimming rules, taxation, and how wishes played out at the table. You may be thinking, that's a weird order to discuss these topics, Justin.
Well, allow me to retort.
That is the alphabetical order by subject as it was done in the time. As with the basic books, the expert set very conveniently places several extremely useful tables in the center of the book for easy reference, covering all manner of wilderness encounter tables to hit and saving throw charts, and updated treasure tables to cover the new items you could find in your next treasure haul. But even better than that, the book has a great section on building campaign worlds that feel lived in, with ample advice to make the world you build more believable. Going above and beyond, Frank even included a sample starting town of Threshold and a starting kingdom being the Grand Duchy of Karamakos. This, of course, is the area that would become the known world setting and later Mystara. And while it was in the Isle of Dread module from the previous expert set box, this was the first real attempt at fleshing out this region that would become so synonymous with BECMI D&D. Following the world building section, there are procedures for overland and water encounters, including how weather impacts sailing. This is only 3 pages, but it still provides a very usable look at how to DM these situations in an effective and manageable way. The book has 11 pages of monsters, including some key favorites like dinosaurs, trolls, and wyverns, greatly expanding the bestiaria for your BECMI campaign. The end of the book has 6 pages of treasure, with the highlight being the subject of intelligent swords. Though they didn't come up often, and they could be a source of distractions and groaning at the table if misplayed, in the hands of the right DM, a good ego weapon could provide many a quest hook and years of memorable stories. While that covers the expert rulebook, the box also has the aforementioned Isle of Dread adventure, clocking in at 32 pages of island hopping, dino fighting, treasure taking, hex crawling goodness. It should be noted that while I own a physical copy of the adventure and the PDF, both are of the prior Moldvay Cookbox variety, as the only legal available PDF is for that version of the adventure. That said, from my memory and my research, the changes are primarily in formatting and layout, as well as a new cover. That said, my discussion here will be based more off of that earlier version of the adventure, so if you find something that I say that didn't apply to the later version, let me know about it in the comments section. With that out of the way, the Isle of Dread is a superb addition to the expert set, as it shows aspiring dungeon masters not only how to write a good hex-crawling adventure, but also how to run it for your players. The module gives a primer on hex crawling and helps to establish some very high-level views of the known world setting to give players a jumping-off point for their travels. As the players arrive at the Isle of Dread, they will have minimal information beyond rumors and an incomplete map that is mostly bland beyond the coastline. Throughout their travels, they will be able to fill in the missing pieces with the help of their DM, who has their own completed version of the map to work with. The adventure very cleverly establishes bases from which the party can operate at different points in the adventure, showing new DMs how a good hexcrawl places those somewhat safe zones within the reach of parties at all stages of the story. The module also has some nice surprises for players that are unfamiliar with the material, with its Lost World, Kong Island type of setting, eschewing traditional fantasy fare for huge prehistoric beasties, and the mundane for the truly weird. The process and a lot of the presentation of this adventure can still be seen in modern products to this day. The Isle of Dread sets the bar for what a good hexcrawl is, and it remains relevant now 40 years later. And that, my friends, is what was in that glorious blue box. Beyond the Borderlands with Beck. Beck and his group of intrepid adventurers, now growing in number and fame, spent much of their blue box years heading off to far places of the world, such as the Isle of Dread, fighting all manner of monsters from dinosaurs and dragons all the way down to the enemies that walked on 2 legs. Through this process, Beck became quite capable with his sword Wolfsbane, and even more durable. He could now comfortably stand toe-to-toe with ogres and the like that earlier in his career would have required immense planning and numerous allies to dispatch. This is not to say that things became easy, as with the increase in their capabilities, they found themselves squaring off with increasingly dangerous adversaries. During their blue box adventures, Beck's group would fight all manner of colossal giants, cunning vampires, unpredictable beasts from prehistory, as well as humans that had every bit as much experience and resources as them. While Beck was improving his swordplay, his fellow party members were becoming near superhuman. The clerics in the group could now raise the dead from their permanent slumber, and while turning undead had been impressive, they could now cause them to burst into ashes by merely presenting their holy symbols. The magic user was true to her word and did indeed learn to hurl those balls of fire, though that seems trivial as compared to some of her more impressive feats. She could now animate the dead to do her bidding, conjure elementals from thin air, or even turn her enemies to stone, something she commonly threatened members of the party with when they interrupted her studies. For a time, the group had demi-human companions as well, however they seemed to lack the ambition that possessed the humans, as they were ready to settle down and take up roles of leadership in their clans long before their human counterparts wanted to hang up their adventuring gear. That said, even the humans had become concerned with their legacies during this period of their adventures, building massive strongholds and great numbers of followers seeking to learn from their expertise. Even the otherwise antisocial magic user built a tower from which she taught her students the finer points of spellcasting. After losing several party thieves along the way, the current one took to starting his own guild within the city, which on more than one occasion had provided the group with invaluable information. Of course, these structures didn't pay for themselves, and those followers didn't feed themselves, which led to the party again collectively adventuring, seemingly on more and more grand quests each time. Beck, towards the end of his blue box days, even started seeking meaning in a higher cause, paying close attention to the tenets of the clerics in the group, hinted at possibly pledging his sword to their cause in the near future. Of course, with the rumor of war brewing on the horizon, the group may have its hands full, just managing the responsibilities that they already have. The good and the bad. First, the good. Number 1. Hex crawling. The expert set introduces hex crawling, which really makes D&D more of a storytelling game than just a glorified board game. With the Isle of Dread, they really do establish a pattern of how to build and run a proper hex crawl. Whenever you first encounter this in your gaming life, you will find that the entire world opens up as soon as you get your party out of the dungeon. Number 2. The known world. Who would have imagined from such humble beginnings we would get the extensive Gazetteer line, the Hollow World and Dawn of the Emperor's box sets, the Champions of Mystara, and even the 2nd edition Red Steel line, all from the seeds sown in the expert set. Number 3. Strongholds. Domain level play is, in my opinion, the best argument to play past 10th level, and its beginnings are in the expert set. By establishing a stronghold or a tower, you have a built-in method for forcing the players to continue to go on adventures after, by all rights, they probably should be settling down. After all, they need to get treasure to keep those big buildings moving, right? They have to pay for their followers and their retainers, and they have to do constant repairs and additions to keep all of their subjects happy. The strongholds allow you to have a mechanic to force that while still being fun for the players and not realizing that they're being forced into doing something that they otherwise might not. Now, the bad. Player DM split of the book. I know. This was the opposite gripe I had with the BECK'S set. So there, I love that they split up the 2 books, but then they lost the accompanying adventure module that had been in the prior version. Here, they sacrificed that split so I could keep my Isle of Dread, which I think is absolutely crucial for expert level play. I think you have to have that proper hex crawl adventure in order to do the expert levels correctly. But I still would have preferred if the players and DM's information had been split. I know it probably wasn't feasible, but that's my gripe. Number 2, low demi-human cap levels. When you think about it, 42% of the BECMI classes are done advancing by level 12. Now, this is somewhat addressed in the companion set with their attack ranks and being able to increase in that way, but really, it is kind of a downer that a large portion of the characters are really done adventuring before you even get through the expert set box, and you still have 3 more boxes to go. The demi-humans were supposed to be kind of an afterthought, I think, anyways, but we had a lot of fun with elves and dwarves, and yes, even a halfling or 2. Number 3, power creep. By the time we get into those expert levels, spellcasters have really started to come into their own. They're no longer the wimpy characters at the back of the party that can't do anything. Now they are changing worlds with their very words. I think that this is okay, and later on, especially in the Masters set, BECMI probably does a better job of handling this power differential than any of the other versions of Dungeons & Dragons proper, in my opinion. But Here in the expert set, you are going to see some levels where those spellcasters just greatly outpace the thieves, of course the thieves, and the fighters of the world. Summary. I spent a lot of time in this box as a kid. I can fondly remember slaying dragons, finding hordes of treasure, and building strongholds, specifically while we were playing through the levels covered in this very box. The memories that TSR and specifically Frank Mincer helped my friends and I build those decades ago are enduring to this very day. While the AD&D game typically gets the attention, and it deserves to get attention, as it innovatively changed the game in some dramatic ways, the Mincer Expert Set is where the BECMI game established that you didn't need to move on to AD&D, as you had everything you needed to play a lifelong campaign right within these very pages. In my opinion, this is the set that moved BECMI beyond building a character and into building a world. Those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours. What was your favorite expert set spell? Did you ever build a stronghold in your campaign? What did I miss from the blue box that you feel I should have mentioned? Let's talk about all this and more in the comments section. The next video in this series will cover the companion set with its new spells, class options, and mass combat system, as well as its absolute mugging of the thief class. But that's in the future, so until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.